Hello and welcome to SEGA News Bits Forever. I'm Barry, with me is George.
Forever
and ever, BFFs, Fs. And we are going to be talking about SEGA Forever. Specifically, we're going to be talking about an interview that we held on SEGAbits.com. Well, we didn't hold it, like they didn't sit on the website and answer the questions. It was via email. But basically, we sent a ton of questions over to Danny Russell, who is, he does social media stuff for them, PR stuff, SEGA Forever stuff. He's a real cool guy, and why is he cool? Because he answered all of our questions. He didn't cut any of them. I don't like when they cut the questions.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I know. Well, we asked nicely, I think. So we are going to be going through, we're going to cherry pick a few of them. We're going to let you read the whole thing, because we did leave out some pretty cool ones, which are, like website exclusives or something? So you can see that link there. But let's dive right into this. So one of the questions we asked Danny, we said, Danny, SEGA Forever launched with titles that have appeared on mobile prior, and the next teased game, Virtua Tennis Challenge, has also been released previously. Does SEGA Forever plan on bringing retro games that haven't been released on mobile before? And basically, Danny said that yes. So, Virtua Tennis Challenge has been out, but the big thing is that they're adding 64-bit support along with other features. I know as someone who owns the game, it does not run well. It crashes on me. So that's really good to hear. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that's pretty good. I mean, they already took your money, Barry. You know what I mean? They could have just not supported this, left it to die, but now they're putting more money into it. They're going to re-release it, and you could restore your purchase when it comes out with 64-bit support and get the new version. You right?
Yeah. And he says, with regards to titles that haven't been released before, yes, very much so. Our first several months may seem a little safe in terms of the titles we choose, but we are pushing for titles that haven't been available in earlier collections and have received approval for many of these titles already. So I think that's pretty exciting. Kind of a follow-up question, we also asked that, as mentioned with the Virtua Tennis Challenge, SEGA titles will sometimes become unable to launch due to a lack of updates. You spend your hard-earned, like $4.99 on something like Jet Set Radio and Choo Choo Rocket, and in return, the performance issues don't get fixed, and the games don't launch. And I think that's terrible business just because it tells you, well, I shouldn't buy this game because they might stop supporting it,
I agree with you.
And he said that they will be updating several of their delisted titles to be 64-bit compatible, which is great. Improving controls, adding in the relevant SEGA Forever features. He said they've already done this with Altered Beast and Phantasy Star 2. Obviously, but I still think the big ones are Jet Set Radio and Choo Choo Rocket, probably some of their best mobile ports.
Yeah, I agree. I think Choo Choo Rocket, and I really want to play that game, but it wasn't on Android, so hopefully it comes to Android. I should have asked that question, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of like the best way to play the game, because, when you play the Dreamcast, it's really hard to move that cursor around, but when you're touching it, it's really intuitive. You asked this one. You said, well, the launch had all Sega Genesis games. There was a difference in quality between the Christian Whitehead version of Sonic, I think you asked this one,
yeah,
and the rest, which ran on an emulator. Yeah. Will Sega Forever have releases that contrast in quality like this? And good old Danny Russell said, our dev team is hard at work improving the Mega Drive Genesis emulator, and you'll be able to see performance getting better in the coming months. We're also adding numerous features to the wrapper, such as customizable control overlays and graphic filter options. Thoughts on this, George?
I love having options, but I think they have to obviously fix the emulation on what's happening right now, and I'm glad that that's their priority, is fixing the emulation. I think that's very important to a lot of people. You want to represent the Sega Mega Drive as it was, at least as close as hardware as possible. I think there's a lot of negativity on the Mega Drive because of how bad the sound is on a lot of emulated stuff, like at games. So yeah. I think it's important to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, I think There was that Eurogamer interview, and they were talking to, we were just talking about him before we recorded. What is it, Mike Evans, right?
Yeah.
I went to school with Mike Evans. I think I've said that before. Anyway, and I feel like he gave an answer that a lot of people didn't like. I kind of felt like his answers were more like, well, we're happy with how it is, and we might make some changes. But I'm glad that, the answers we got, acknowledge that there are issues that need to be fixed and that they're fixing them. I think the worst answer we could have gotten is if he said, well, it works for people, and if it works, if it's good enough, it's good enough.
And actually, that's a thing too. Like, okay, before this whole thing happened, a lot of these games were released back in 2010, and they only got about 10,000 downloads. Sure, it wasn't free to play, but now each title has gotten over 100,000 downloads. Mm-hmm. So this has worked, and the ratings are good. Even though I personally not into the emulation on these. A lot of people don't seem to mind, and I'm glad that they didn't just sit there and go, all right, these guys don't care, so let's just move on. I'm glad that they're actually want to be better.
Coming up next, we have a question from us. Was there ever a plan to bring or create a SEGA Forever app, sort of how the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis Classics handles retro games on PC in a hub? And I like their answer on this one, because this is something I was really wondering just in terms of how, mobile works. He said, we chose to go for separate apps in each game due to the way deliverability works in the mobile ecosystem. If you tell a friend they need to play Altered Beast or Comic Zone, the first thing they do is search for those games. If we had a centralized app, you'd have to search for SEGA Forever. Searching for the title of the game wouldn't always work, and as it is currently, you can search for SEGA Forever or the game's title. Thoughts on that?
I think there could be a middle ground to this. I feel like he is right. He's not wrong on this. He is 100% right. But at the same time, they could have done a hub that was separate, and then it allowed you to download it and just have them in the hub instead of having them on your app drawer. I don't know. I think they could have done both things, but they chose that they wanted to go this way.
I mean, who knows? Maybe things could change in the future. They might have such a huge library that there could be like a companion app. I know with Facebook, the thing has there's a messenger app, and then there's like a private group message app, and those, when you're in the Facebook app, you can press a button and it launches that other app. So I don't think that's an issue within the mobile ecosystem, but I totally understand what he's saying with the search thing, because there's an Atari collection, and it has all these arcade games, but they're all in a hub. And so I feel like a lot of people don't know that Centipede is on the, the iPhone, because it's locked away on this Atari hub.
Yeah.
And then I think, there's, what is it, Konami or someone has one? And again, it's like, you wouldn't think it has anything. And then you go in there and you're like, oh, it's, who made Spy Hunter?
I have no idea.
I don't either. But Spy Hunter's on there. But people don't know that because it's locked away in a hub app. So it makes sense. If you really want a hub, just create a folder on your phone, I guess, for all the games.
I guess at this point, yeah.
Next question we asked was, some retro Sega games could benefit from implementing touch controls. Is there a plan to handle titles with specific touch controls, or are you going for an emulated on-screen controller for each release? And I thought this was probably one of the more interesting questions and answers we had. So Danny said, Saturn and Dreamcast titles will have specific touch controls where it makes sense. Imagine if we were to port a light gun game. Of course, we'd have you tap the enemy rather than use a virtual D-pad to shoot them, he says, with an exclamation point. For emulators, we're sticking with on-screen controllers for now, but the OSD will be fully customizable soon, which should please people who want to set up their own preferred layout rather than default presets available at the moment. Players with controllers will be getting a lot of use out of them. We've committed to making sure all SEGA Forever titles have Bluetooth controller support.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I think it's important because I think there's a lot of games that Sega's made in the past that could really benefit from using touch controls. I think the light gun was obvious. I think SRPGs is another one. I don't know. What else do you think we could use a light gun? Touch controls.
Obviously, we've already talked about Choo Choo Rocket. I think any puzzle games. I know that they one of the very first Sega iOS games, one of the earliest ones, was this weird columns and I think Puyo Puyo game or something like that. The controls were awful, but it was a great idea because you basically would swipe down, swipe left, swipe right to move the things around. It was just badly implemented. It was a bad app.
I'm also into the idea of having a Seaman mobile game. That'd be pretty cool.
The last question we asked, or at least the last one we're talking about here, it's not the last one in our interview, we said, what will SEGA Forever look like in 1 year? And Danny said that the majority of the titles will still be Mega Drive Genesis, as these do tend to be our most popular titles. There will be a whole bunch of Master System, SG-1000, and Game Gear titles in the mix by then too. Dreamcast titles will be in the mix by then, and will be well underway in developing our Saturn ports too.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
So that's something I'm really interested in looking back on in a year from now. What is this? July 2018.
Yes.
We can talk about this. What do you think about that?
I don't think they're gonna make it. I'm gonna be honest with you. Well, I mean, we've been in here, like, we've followed Sega News for a long time, and a lot of these like little initiatives, they always try to like overpromise, and then they either stop it or they slow down when they have to fix things. Like right now, they still have to fix a Genesis emulation.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they stick on track and they make it, but if they're late, I'm not going to give them too much slack about it. I think if they just fix a Genesis emulation and then they actually get a Dreamcast in a year, I'll be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we did ask them a question about, the past things like the Dreamcast collection and Sega Ages and all that, and some of them, they like 3D Classics, I thought, and went on for a long time. Sega Ages went on for a long time but never made it to the West, really. So I hope Sega Forever is like that, rather than like the Dreamcast collection of 4 games.
Yeah.
So if you guys, if this interested you, we have a ton more questions and answers. You can see the link below over at SEGAbits.com. It's also in the featured bar if you're watching this in the next week or two. So and do you have any questions for Sega Forever? Why don't you post them in the comments below, and maybe we'll send them over to Sega if they're interested, or whatever. Maybe we'll just send them if they're not interested.
Share the video. I mean,
like us, subscribe.
Yeah.